year was 2019. I found myself scrambling in the morning to get ready for work because I was about to be late, okay? As I'm getting dressed, despite how late it is or how late I am getting out of the door and getting to work, I gotta have something playing in the background. And I'll sit there and take 5 minutes out of my morning just to scroll on YouTube and Spotify, just to have some sort of music or podcast or interview clip going in the background as I'm getting dressed. I'm not Patrick Bateman. I can't just get dressed in silence, you know? And so that morning, I stumbled upon an interview. I can't remember who conducted the interview, but I'm sure I'll find it when I'm editing it, and I'll put it like somewhere right here. In the interview, they were interviewing a New York artist by the name of A$AP Ferg. And in that interview, he was pretty much giving his critique and review of various New York City artists coming up in that during that time, right? And so he's being shown these various artists. He's giving his review and opinion on these different guys and ladies. And they're rappers, of course. And, you know, of course, it's some are good, some are trash, some are good, some are trash. And it goes so on and so forth. And I'm still getting dressed, just kind of listening in the background. And then it gets to one artist in this interview, and they ask him, they show A$AP Ferg, the artist, and they play his music. And I'm getting dressed. I'm about to be late. And still, I have to pause for a second and just listen. Because though the genre of rap that was being played, which was like drill rap, was nothing unfamiliar to me at the time, the delivery was so fresh, was so unique that I just had to sit and listen. And it appears that A$AP Ferg did the same thing because he was kind of blown away by this guy's sound. And of course, sticking with the theme of the interview, A$AP Ferg would give his review of the artist that he just heard, and A$AP goes, "Wow, this guy is unique." I'm paraphrasing, of course. "This guy is unique. He has a really interesting voice. I think he's going places." And to this day, like I said, the interview was conducted and released in 2019, but to this day, 2024, Happy New Year, I still think about that particular interview and that particular moment in that interview because he could not have been more correct. The artist in question here had a voice that was so interesting is the word. Unique, interesting. It was gravelly. It was rough. It was extremely like deep and baritone, but smooth as butter. It's so hard to explain. It was such an anomaly, but it sounded so good on the beat. I remember that same day I get home and I on the commute back home, I'm listening to this guy's music. I'm now becoming a fan, right? But his voice is like, it's interesting. It's like almost too deep at times and too unique and just too like weird almost. And I go home that night and I'm in the garage hanging out with my older brother and I show him this guy, and my brother, he's like a harsh critic of my music. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to put my older brother onto new music. You know what I'm saying? He also is a big hip hop guy like I am, but what we listen to is a little bit different. So whenever I show him something, it's not too common that he likes it on the first listen, but he takes a step back and he listens to this guy's sound, and at first he kind of chuckles, like the voice was just kind of weird, but then I could tell it was growing on him. It was growing on him. And by God, he became a fan. And we sat there that night and we bumped Pop Smoke. Pop Smoke, born Bashar Baraka Jackson, was born on July 20th, 1999 in Canarsie, Brooklyn. His mother was a Jamaican lady by the name of Audrey Jackson, and his father was a Panamanian gentleman by the name of Greg Jackson. Now, the name Pop Smoke, obviously being his street nickname and eventually his rap alias, was given to him by a combination, actually, his grandmother, who called him Papa, gave him the nickname Papa, and his friends who refused to call another grown man Papa would go on to call him Smoko Guwop. And when you combine the two names, you got Pop Smoke.
I'm Panamanian. So my grandma called me Papa, like, you know what I'm saying, since a kid. But my name on the street when I was a kid was Smoko Guwop. Like, that was my IG. So the homeboys didn't want to call me Papa, so they called me Pop. And they just mixed the pop with the smoke. And they just came as one.
And that's how this iconic name was created. And Pop Smoke, at a pretty damn young age, displayed a very keen interest in music, as he, at the age of 8 years old, would go on to play the African drums for his church, okay? Now, Pop Smoke, much like many African-American men growing up in impoverished cities here in the U.S., would soon become a product of his environment, okay? At grade 8, Pop Smoke was placed on house arrest for 2 years, as well as expelled from his school for bringing a loaded firearm on campus, okay? Not a good idea, all right? But there was one saving grace in this young man's life that would potentially keep him out of the street, and that was his love for basketball. Now, as a last-ditch effort to keep Pop Smoke away from this criminal element that was outside of his doorstep, his folks hatched up the idea to send him off to Philadelphia to attend Rock Top Academy to pursue a career in basketball, okay? And Pop Smoke actually did pretty well, but unfortunately, that last-ditch effort was cut short rather quickly when it was discovered that he had a heart murmur and was no longer eligible to play basketball, okay? And so he was shipped back to Canarsie, Brooklyn, where he really delved pretty deep into his street life. Now, fortunately, he did not become a statistic through this street element that he was surrounded by. He did not end up dead and in jail in his teenage years. He actually was doing pretty damn good for himself, and could even be cited in interviews explaining how he, before he even had a license, was pulling up to his high school in foreign whips, like these expensive luxury cars that he paid for with money acquired through his criminal lifestyle, okay? Now, in this criminal lifestyle, Pop Smoke was obviously surrounded by a lot of like sketchy characters who would eventually have led him down a pretty sour path that would have absolutely made him a statistic. But one of his friends was also someone who displayed a keen interest and love for music, okay? One of his friends was a local rap artist in New York by the name of Jay Guapo. Now, while Pop Smoke chose the street life, Mr. Jay Guapo chose the music life, and he was making a name for himself in the city. And Pop Smoke would oftentimes accompany Mr. Jay Guapo on his trips to the studio. Now, Pop Smoke spent majority of the time within the studio just listening, observing, maybe taking notes, just taking it in, soaking it up soaking up the environment. And eventually, Pop Smoke would become a product of that environment, and he began to develop an interest in hip hop. And one day, he decides to get in the studio and sort of mess around and see how his unique voice would sound on wax, on a beat. And on January 8th, 2019, Pop Smoke would release his first song, Flexin'. Now, Pop Smoke will continue to mess around in the studio and experiment with his voice and experiment with different drill beats and stuff. And it's realized pretty damn quickly that, holy shit, this guy is talented. And he has a sound that not only I like, but the producers like. And he gains the attention of different record labels. On April of 2019, that same year, Pop Smoke would go on to sign with Victor Records as well as Republic Records. And shortly after signing with those two record labels, he would go on to release his first breakout single, Welcome to the Party. Baby, welcome to the party. I'm off the Molly to Xanoline. That's why I'm moving retarded. Baby, welcome to the party. Uh-huh. I hit the boy up and then I go skating the Rari. Baby, welcome to the party. I ain't got a voice like Pop, all right? My shit's a little deep, but not Pop deep. But goddamn, I love that song. And that's the song that I heard the first time in 2019 that put me onto this dude. And that's the song that I showed my brother. That's the song I showed my sister, my girlfriend. That made us all fans of Pop Smoke. That was a very iconic track that he released. And the fact, I just learned this while I was doing my research. The fact that that was his first breakout single and it did those kind of numbers, okay? And created that kind of buzz for him on song number 1. I mean, this guy was ready to take over the world. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, okay? Because shortly after that, in the summer of 2019, July 26th, Pop Smoke would release the mixtape Meet the Woo, okay? Now, if Welcome to the Party, that breakout single, which was on Meet the Woo, was fire, then Meet the Woo was smoldering hot. I mean, that was a damn good project, okay? And, you know, that single put his name out there, but Meet the Woo really took him to a different level. All right. And it receives major critical acclaim. It was a success. Now, from October of that same year to December, Pop Smoke would continue to release like multiple different singles and he'd create more of a buzz for himself. And he actually appeared on the Travis Scott album, Jack Boys, on the song Gotti. And that is when he dropped the iconic line, "You cannot say pop and forget the smoke." Okay.
You cannot say pop and forget the smoke. I'm from the floors where niggas told they couldn't be cribs, so they turned full.
And the song would go on to peak at number 69 on the Billboard Hot 100 on January 16th, that same year, 2019, but it's now coming to an end, January 16th. Oh shit. And on January 16th, 2020, we're now in 2020, Pop Smoke would release the single Christopher Walking in an effort to promote his mixtape, Meet the Woo 2, which was soon to drop.
Niggas saying they outside. Niggas saying they outside.
And on February 7th, 2020, Pop Smoke would release the mixtape, Meet the Woo 2, his second official mixtape, and it goes on to receive even more critical acclaim. And it debuts at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 200. Okay, now this is when, I mean, if you look at all the dates here, like this guy starts receiving crazy success from the second he releases his first song. I mean, like the first official song. The first song he recorded in the studio with himself and his homeboys was fire. But, you know, Welcome to the Party was insane. And so that like begins to skyrocket him rather quickly to like major mainstream success in hip hop and the drill rap platform. You know, that second mixtape comes out and he decides that he's got to like celebrate the success. I mean, he's got to take time and realize the accomplishments that are reigning in less than a year of this guy even being a rapper. And so he hatches up the idea that he and his best friend, Mike D, would decide to take a little vacation, little trip to Los Angeles, California. At 11 a.m. on February 18th of 2020, Pop Smoke would go on to post an Instagram story from a mansion in Beverly Hills, California. Now, that first post would begin a trend on that trip that would eventually lead Pop Smoke to a very, very sticky situation. Okay. A lot of posting, a lot of sharing of locations was done on that trip. Okay. And if maybe there was less posting, if maybe they were a little bit more discreet about where they were, then perhaps there wouldn't be a video tonight. But I digress. As the day would progress on, he would eventually, he would go on to post I think it's a video of himself receiving a haircut in the Airbnb. And shortly after that, he would post a photo of himself standing in the backyard of that Airbnb overlooking the beautiful hills of Beverly Hills, California. Now, at 4 p.m. on that same day, his best friend, Mike D, would post a series of photos onto his Instagram. Some of those photos Pop Smoke also used on his Instagram. I know that because if you go on Pop Smoke's Instagram today, you'll still see that it was the last post that he made. But on the post from Mike D's Instagram, which has since been deleted, if you're swiping through that post, it's a series of pictures, man. These guys are flaunting their cars, their money, the beautiful Airbnb that they were staying at. You'll see in one of the photos a sliver of the address was posted in the top left-hand corner of the picture. If you look in that picture, you'll see the last digits on the address posted were 033. Now, to like people like myself, and hopefully most of you motherfuckers watching, you might see this and say, that's rather reckless, but I'm gonna like it and move on. You don't think much of it, right? But when you are a greedy criminal and you see something like that posted by two notable characters like Pop Smoke and his friend Mike D, who are obviously displaying a lot of wealth and the fact that they own a lot of valuable, expensive items, you might begin to take note of some things, okay? Pop Smoke had already announced that they are in Beverly Hills, California. I'm looking at this post done by Mike D. The address Beverly Hills is again posted, but the actual location, the exact location of the Airbnb is nearly like given away in that post. So you can see like they're moving a little bit dangerously. They're treading on some dangerous waters here. All right. Now at 5 p.m. on February 18th, again, the same day, another photo is posted by Pop Smoke where he is showing a stack of cash and his diamond Rolex in his vehicle. Okay. So again, it's like even more things that would make him a target for these grisly criminals who were absolutely fucking lurking that day. Okay. Now, Pop Smoke does not post for another 5 hours as he is out in Los Angeles shopping and doing a little bit of work here and there and just enjoying the city, enjoying his vacation as he fucking should have been. That is when at 10 p.m., it's now nighttime on the same day, February 18th, 2020, Pop Smoke would return to his mansion, the Airbnb, and he would post another story from the exact same place in his backyard overlooking the pool, with the hills displayed in the background, this time at night, kind of just like showing that he's back home. After about exactly 12 hours after the first post was made that they had touched down in Los Angeles, a video is taken by Pop Smoke and it is recorded and uploaded to Facebook this time around. And in the video, I'll actually put up for you guys here. You can check it out. You'll see that he's like going through all these different gift bags that he had received from the notable designer clothing company, Amiri. Okay, Amiri, Billie Jean. All right, if you know Pop Smoke, you know those lyrics. And you'll see here, man, he really received a lot of gifts. It's pretty cool stuff. It's pretty cool stuff here, and he would go on to go to the studio. That hang on just a second. Can we replay that video, please? Okay, yeah, replay one more time, please. Yeah, go, slow it down. Okay. Wait, pause it right there. Huh. Looks like. Yeah, can we go ahead and enhance? Yeah, go ahead and enhance it one more time. Right there. Oh my God. Do my eyes deceive me? Do my eyes deceive me? Or is that what I think it is? Oh my goodness. folks, if you're sitting here watching the video, not just listening to it, you'd be just as shocked as I am. Because in this piece of footage before us today, we see the exact location, which was on one of the gift bags, which is the exact location of where Pop Smoke is staying at. It is the exact location of the Airbnb. Pop Smoke had unintentionally, in that Facebook video, revealed the entire location of the Airbnb for the entire world, including those greasy criminals, to see. God damn it. Now, a few people, aside from myself and you guys at home, were just as shocked to see this insane mess up here. Because shortly after the post was made, Pop Smoke's manager would give him a call from New York City across the country, telling Pop Smoke what he had just done and to immediately remove the video from the internet, which Pop Smoke immediately does, okay? But he does so a tad bit too late. Because two teenagers from the notorious Hoover Gang in Compton, California, would take note of this mess up. And at 12 p.m., midnight, they begin researching the address of Pop Smoke, which happens to only be 20 minutes away from where they reside. We all don't have to be detectives here to realize what these guys were planning to do with that information, okay? After the post is removed at 1 a.m., it's now February 19th, Pop Smoke and his friend Mike D would leave their Airbnb and go to East West Studios in Los Angeles, California to lay some more fat ass tracks, all right? And at 2 a.m. on February 19th, footage was taken from the surveillance cameras on the Airbnb of a black BMW pulling up to the outside of the mansion where Pop Smoke and affiliates were residing. The car would circle back around the block and stop. A passenger would hop out of the vehicle and make his way sneakily towards the house, returning only a minute later, and the car would speed away, disappearing into the night. At 4 a.m., Pop Smoke would return home from the studio, and shortly after his return, on the same security cameras, a black Infiniti sedan can be seen slowly creeping its way up to the Airbnb, where it comes to a complete stop directly in front of it with its headlights turned completely off. 4 people are seen jumping out of the vehicle and they disappear alongside of the house. From there, they would sneak into the backyard and climb onto the second-story balcony pictured here. While out and about that day, Pop Smoke had met a lady by the name of Amelia. Not going to give the last name. You can find that yourself. But Amelia would return home with Pop Smoke and Mike D from the studio that night. And once they arrived home, Pop Smoke would begin to undress and sort of unwind from the day. And he leaves and goes to take a shower, leaving Amelia in the master bedroom by herself and his friend Mike D in a separate guest bedroom. As Pop Smoke is in the shower and Amelia is lying in bed, 2 gunmen would rush inside of the master bedroom from the glass back patio doors that were in the master bedroom, and they are first met with Amelia, who they tell, I'm roughly quoting here, but they tell her to shut the fuck up or she would be killed. Okay. And so she follows directions, and the 2 gunmen, one of the gunmen make their way into the bathroom that Pop Smoke is showering in. And it's interesting because there are 4 gunmen that make entry into the house, and the gunman that actually confronts Pop Smoke is the youngest of the bunch. He's a minor. The motherfucker is 15 years old, and he is pointing a gun at a naked and showering Pop Smoke. Okay, and he demands that Pop Smoke hand over his expensive diamond encrusted Rolex that he had been flexing on his Instagram earlier that day. Now, Pop Smoke, with a gun in his face, decides to comply, and he hands over the Rolex. And then punches the motherfucker directly in the face shortly after. Okay. He then puts up a fight, Pop Smoke. He decides that if you're going to take my shit, if you're going to hold me at gunpoint, then you're going to have to work for it, okay? And a fist fight and a struggle ensues. And that is when the 15-year-old is able to regain control of the gun, and he fires the weapon and shoots Pop Smoke in the chest, okay? Now, Pop Smoke falls to the ground, and he is repeatedly kicked while on the floor. He then, Pop Smoke, regains his footing. He's back on his feet, and he is now running for the exit of the master bedroom. And he is shot 2 more times in the back as he is trying to make his escape. And Pop Smoke was able to make it down the stairs before he collapses to the ground. And the 4 gunmen make a swift exit out of the same back patio door that they had came in from. Now, Mike D, Pop Smoke's best friend, who was sleeping in a separate bedroom, is awakened by the commotion of the yelling and the gunshots and the fist fight, and he quickly rushes to the source of the sound, and he sees at the base of the stairs his best friend Pop Smoke lying on the ground screaming for help. That is when another affiliate of the entourage that was staying with those guys, who will not be named, makes a phone call to the Los Angeles Police Department. The phone call I will play for you, but I will warn you that if you listen closely, you can kind of hear some pleading for help by Pop Smoke in the background. So it's rather fucking disturbing. And here it is.
PD, what are your numbers? I'm gonna tell them to wait for LAPD. All right. Okay, I'll send them. Yeah, me too. I'll get it going. Thanks. Hello?
Now, the killers had as mentioned before, made a pretty swift exit out of the back patio door, and they actually get away that night. They make it scotch-free with Pop Smoke's extremely expensive Rolex. And like all of the cell phone activity, once they were caught, was captured by LAPD investigators. And it was revealed that like almost immediately after they had done what they did to Pop Smoke, they began to scour the internet and Google if any major news media outlets had been reporting it. And then, like, funny enough, it was the watch, the diamond encrusted Rolex that had a price tag of God knows only what, was sold shortly after the attack by the assailants, and they only received like $2,000, and they all had to split that $2,000 amongst 4 people. So they all like walked away with roughly like $400 or $500, and they took someone's life over that shit. Now, there were 4 shooters in total. The oldest of the bunch being Jaquan Murphy. He was 21 years old. Then you had a Mr. Corey Walker, who was 19 years old, and a Mr. Keandre Walker, who was 18 years old at the time. And then you had 2 minors, one of which being the gunman who pulled the trigger. They were 15 and 17 years old. Okay. So we're going to go back to Pop Smoke, who had just been shot, and the call is made to the LA Police Department, and help is sent. When the first responders had arrived to the scene, Pop Smoke was still alive, not conscious, but still alive. However, that first gunshot that was sent into the chest of Pop Smoke would eventually kill him that same day. Okay. And on February 19th, 2020, Pop Smoke was pronounced dead from a gunshot wound to the chest. Now, 3 months later, the 15-year-old gunman was arrested on separate crimes, and his cell phone was rigged, and an informant was placed inside of the cell with the minor here, and they began to converse, and the 15-year-old begins to divulge information about the killing that night. And he divulges enough information that would land him another trial where he is found guilty. The driver of the vehicle is arrested as well, and the same scenario is executed here, and the driver begins to confess a bunch of information about the killing that night in a rigged cell. Okay. And eventually enough information is collected between the minor here, the 15-year-old, and the driver of the vehicle that the other 3 assailants were able to be brought down. And they all currently reside in the California penal system, where they will spend likely the rest of their days, with the exception of the minors here, the 15 and 17-year-old, who, because of the fact that they're minors, their identities were kept a secret, and their sentence was like heavily reduced. Okay. Now, if you're curious about the roles of each of these guys here, Corey Walker, the 19-year-old, stayed in the car. Keandre, the 18-year-old, had led the charge into the house. The 15-year-old and the 17-year-old were charged as juveniles, and their role in the entire incident is not quite confirmed, not quite released to the public, but obviously one of them, the 15-year-old, fucking killed Pop Smoke. So that's where our story ends. However, Pop Smoke's legacy would reign on forever. And while he was alive and making names for himself in that very, very short music career, he had gained the mentorship of very notable characters in the music world, like 50 fucking Cent, who had taken him under his wing and showed him the ropes of the music game and had began to prep him for a very promising musical career. And after the death of Pop Smoke, 50 would go on to produce Pop Smoke's posthumous Shoot for the Moon, Aim for the Stars. Okay. I mean, you'll see, like, if you just go and look at some of the features that were on this posthumous album here, like, holy shit. I mean, you could tell, like, he was really, really loved. He had some serious names come through for this project. I'm looking here, and he had guys, Quavo was featured on the project, Lil Baby, DaBaby, Sway Lee, Quavo, Future, Rowdy Rebel, 50 Cent, Roddy Ricch, Tyga, Karol G, Lil Teach. I mean, he had a lot of King Combs. He had a lot of big acts come together for this here project. Of course, that was produced by 50 Cent. So this guy's impact in the rap game was insane, and especially for the time that he did it in. I mean, the whole situation here, you're talking about a little over a year, a little under a year, that he was really the guy that he was. And unfortunately, he was snatched away from us so fucking soon at the age of 19, well before we were able to see what this man would become. And so, I wish him a big rest in peace. And, as a fan of Pop Smoke, to this day, it really upsets me how senseless this whole situation was, man. Luckily those guys were caught, and it's not like a Tupac or a Biggie Small scenario where the guys are never caught or caught decades later. These guys were brought to justice pretty soon, but still, it does not remove the fact that Pop Smoke is no longer fucking with us, man. And so I want to give a big shout out to Pop Smoke and to him and his loved ones. Though Pop Smoke physically is not with us, his music will live on forever. And that is the story of a Mr. Pop Smoke. I want to thank you all so very much for tuning in to another episode of The Midnight Show. Look, man, not on some cliche shit, but new year, new me. As you can tell, I got some different lighting setups here. I'm kind of experimenting. I'm going to be a lot more consistent with these videos here this year, guys. I want to apologize for the long hiatus, but I mean, between full-time job here and trying to push out these videos, it gets tough and your boy tends to burn out. So I found a good little groove, and I'm more so motivated than ever to get these videos going to you guys consistently. So I appreciate you all for tuning in, for subscribing, for commenting, for liking, for sharing these videos. It means everything to me because I put so much into this content here. I'm a one-man team, and all this hard work is for your enjoyment. So if you enjoy it, be sure to, again, like, comment, and subscribe. And I will be back next week with some more heat. This is The Midnight Show. I want to give a big rest in peace to Pop Smoke. And I bid you all a beautiful farewell and happy new year. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Peace.